Hi, my name's Brian. I want to first commend you for being willing to watch a video entitled The Bad News. Nobody wants to hear bad news. But the truth is, it can be a good thing to hear bad news. For instance, if the doctor tells you that you have cancer, nobody wants to hear that. That's the last thing that anybody wants to hear. But it's good to know because now I can seek treatment. I can look for solutions because I know that there is a problem. The other good thing about bad news is that it makes us appreciate the good news that much more. For instance, if a doctor comes to us and says, hey, look, there's a cure for cancer. There's this pill that you can take and you'll just be automatically healed in a few minutes. Well, if we don't have cancer, if nobody has ever told us that we have cancer, that's not going to mean that much to us. Now, we might be excited for other people. We might say, wow, I know people who have cancer, and I know they're going to love that pill. That's going to save their life, and we could certainly rejoice with other people. But in terms of what that pill could do for us, we would think it's kind of useless. Why is that good news for me when I don't even have cancer? Well, that's just a physical analogy to the spiritual truth that I want to talk to you about, the bad news spiritually with our relationship with God. And I want to present it to you this way. Regardless of whether you believe in God or whether you believe that heaven exists or that hell exists, I want you to imagine with me, if heaven was real and hell was real and you were to stand before God on the day of judgment and He was to look at your life and determine, based on the way that you've lived your life, whether or not to send you to heaven in a place of eternal bliss with Him, or hell, a place of eternal torment. I really, really want you to be honest during this exercise. It's crucial. Some people might answer hell. If that's the case, then you already understand the bad news, and this video could end right here. But most people would say, oh, I think God would send me to heaven. But I want you to really ask yourself, why is that the case? Why do you believe God would send you to heaven? What is that based on? Is that a feeling that you have? You just maybe a hope that you have? Or is it rooted in truth and in fact? The truth is, God on the day of judgment will judge all of us based on the standard of His law. And if we look at the very basics of God's law, just basic things that we find, for instance, in the Ten Commandments, like thou shalt not lie, or thou shalt not steal, or commit adultery, or murder. Let's just use those and ask yourself, honestly, have you ever told a lie? Have you ever told a lie? If so, what do we call people who tell lies? Well, we call them liars. Have you ever stolen anything? Have you ever taken anything that didn't belong to you, no matter how big or small? Well, what do we call people that take things or that steal things? Thieves. Have you ever committed adultery with someone? Now, this is a little different because Jesus actually says, if we lust after a woman or a man in our hearts, we have committed adultery with them already on the inside in our hearts. Have you ever lusted after a woman or after a man? If so, you are an adulterer according to God's law. These are just 3 laws. We could keep going with even more. And I'll tell you, I have done all of those things as well. So this is not me picking on you at all. But I just want you to think about that. Knowing by your own admission, if you have lied, that you're a liar. If you've stolen something, that you're a thief. If you've committed adultery, that you're an adulterer at heart. If you were to stand before God on the day of judgment, just on the basis of those 3 laws, let alone the hundreds of other laws that God has given us, would you be innocent or guilty before your judge? Now, you might recognize, well, I'd be guilty but God will just forgive me. Well, let's imagine how that would go in an earthly courtroom. If we went into a courtroom today with an earthly judge and we committed a crime, we had broken the law of the land, would it work to just say to the judge, hey, you can just forgive me, right? And let me go? Well, that sounds nice, but if he did that, or if she did that as a judge, they would not be a just judge. The job of a judge is to carry out justice, to make sure that the penalties are meted out for those who break the law. It's the same way when we stand before God. Forgiveness sounds nice, but God, being a just judge, can't just let us off the hook. He cannot let crimes go unpunished any more than a judge on this earth could. Likewise, if we stood before an earthly judge, we wouldn't be able to say, hey, judge, I understand I'm a lawbreaker and I'm guilty, I'm a criminal, but I'm going to do all these really good deeds and that's going to cancel it out. So instead of being punished, I'll just kind of earn my way back into the good graces of society. That wouldn't work either. In order for justice to be carried out, the punishment for the crime has to be carried out. There's nothing we could do, no matter how many good deeds we did or how sorry we were. We could grovel and beg to the judge, I'm so sorry, and he might have compassion on us, but at the same time, because he is a just judge, or she on the bench is a just judge, that judge has to carry out punishment in order for justice to be done. And this is even more obvious when you think about crimes like murder, and if a judge just says to the murderer, hey, I forgive you, it's okay, you can go free, everybody would cry out injustice. It might be great for you, but the family of the murder victim, oh boy, they would just be furious with that judge. They would be absolutely outraged, and it would be a miscarriage of justice. It's the same way with God, the ultimate judge. He can't just let us go. He can't just let us off the hook. The punishment for our crimes must be paid. Romans chapter 3 verse 23 says, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And Romans 6:23 says, the wages of sin is death. In other words, all of us are lawbreakers in God's sight. We have all violated God's law, myself included. Not just those three, but many more of God's laws. And so we stand guilty before a holy and just judge. And if we were to stand before him, if we were to die today, and let's admit, we don't know when we're going to die. You could die today. I could die today. When we stand before God on Judgment Day, the bad news is we're guilty. And in order for God to carry out justice, he would have to send us to hell. That is the bad news. That is going to make sense of the good news in the next video. That's going to make the good news much more meaningful. But I just want you to think for now, honestly, about the seriousness of how bad this news really is. That we have this spiritual cancer caused by sin that separates us from God, that makes us guilty before God, and will ultimately condemn us to hell. Think about that. And then come back to the next video where I talk about the good news.